I'm at the top of the ceiling, looking down in the ICU. I see myself on the operating table, and I look the same on the operating table. Then I look down at my own body, and I'm the same person, but I'm a ghostly version of that person. That's how I see myself.
I'd like to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today, I have Amy Jamison with us. She's had a near-death experience, and we're going to talk about the experience that she went through and some other stuff as well, some other questions that I have that I'd like to ask her. So, first of all, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
One of the questions I originally always start with on these episodes is if you could paint a little bit of a picture of your life before your experience and who you were and what your life was like before everything kind of changed there.
Oh, sure. Okay, so I'm one of five siblings with three different dads within the family. I always felt since I was around 5 years old that I wasn't of that father. And later in life, I found that out to be true when I was about 55, didn't learn till then. I was very spiritual and religious. At that time, I grew up strict Catholic all the way through 10th grade. Although during those times, I really couldn't believe in a hell. I had never experienced it. I've heard other people that I've spoken to that very, very few said they went to hell. But I just couldn't comprehend that. Since Jesus died for everyone, I couldn't comprehend that scenario at all. I was always very intuitive growing up. I felt many times that I'd been to different places before that I went to. Um, I will say I made a lot of mistakes in my life, which I will call learning lessons. Married several times and learned a lot from that. In 1976, I had a near death experience. I was married at the time, the father of my two children, and he unfortunately was an atheist and he did not believe in medical at all. I was at work one day as a dental assistant and I had a very horrible cough and cold and was wearing a mask and turning around and coughing during patient time. I drove home and felt like my left arm felt very heavy all of a sudden. And when I got home, um, I told my spouse my chest was hurting. I wasn't feeling well, but of course he didn't believe me. So about 6 hours later, after doing several loads of laundry, cleaning the house, and doing dinner, I sat down. And at that time, I was smoking. All of a sudden, I couldn't even smoke. So I got on the. I said, "Would you please call an ambulance?" And he goes, "No, you're a hypochondriac. There's nothing wrong with you." And I asked several times, and he wouldn't do it. So I got up and did it. And when I did, I called the emergency room and spoke to the doctor on call. And that doctor said, "Is there anyone there with you?" And I said, "Yes, my husband." He goes, "Put him on." Well, he went to the phone, raised his eyes real wide, and then slammed the phone down and said, "Let's go." I said, "What did he say to you?" He said, "He told me he could tell from speaking to you on the phone that you were struggling to breathe and that I'd better get you there as fast as possible. If you die on the way or there, I would definitely be held responsible." And I thought, great, okay. So we got there. It was confirmed I had a walk-in pneumonia and pleurisy liquid in my lungs, and I was going to have a chest tube insertion. It was during that chest tube insertion that I actually died. And I will be happy to tell you about that, or you can ask me questions. Yeah.
So you were just living a normal life. You had kind of a typical I don't want to say typical, but we're in the 70s. People were married a few times.
Right.
Was this your first marriage, did you say, or you've been
Actually,
married?
it's my second marriage.
So this was your
Yes.
second marriage by the time this
Uh-huh.
happened. And I shouldn't say it was just because it was the 70s. I mean, people still get married many times, but it seemed to be a little bit more prominent back then, a little bit. But um, so okay, so and you had a cold which turned into pneumonia, and
Right.
you're working through the pneumonia, you're working through it, and your husband's not really taking it serious, but you know it's serious. You're feeling
Right.
heavy in your arm, which indicates something's off a little bit there,
Right. In my
and
chest.
in your chest as well, right? So you weren't getting enough oxygen, it sounds like. So you get
No.
sent to the hospital, you go to the hospital, and they have now put you into a situation that they obviously see it as a serious situation. Did it happen pretty
Right.
quick? I'm assuming they got you in pretty quick to.
They got me in
Okay.
very quickly, and yes, and then said right away, you need a chest tube, and took me into the operating room where
Okay.
they started the chest tube insertion.
Before you tell me about your near-death experience, what was your life like in regards to your own spiritual or religious beliefs?
Well, I always believed in Jesus, Mary, and the angels, being raised Catholic. And the only part I had trouble with that, of course, like I said, was that there was a hell, because I was always told and learned that Jesus died for everyone, which to me meant, in my opinion, that there was really no hell. We're all going to heaven if we just say, I believe and please forgive me.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up believing.
Okay. And so would you say though that compared to others around you, you were more influenced in your religion, or do you think that was just normal for your area where you lived? People went to church. Like, was that a normal day-to-day behavior when you were a child?
That was a normal thing in my environment, as I went to Catholic catechism classes, so everyone there believed that was in the classes. Maybe one or two didn't, but there's
Right.
always a rebel in there somewhere.
Right. Okay, perfect. So, okay. So yeah, let's go through what happened. So you're at a moment where they're putting in, you said, were they putting a tube in so you could breathe better? Is that how that happened?
Yes, they had to put a chest tube in order to drain the fluid out of the lungs so that I could breathe. And they told me, well, we're going to numb the skin and put the chest tube in, but you're going to feel the part on the inside where we can't numb. We only numb the outside. So they started the procedure. And when they did, all of a sudden, everything went totally black for me. It was as if I opened my eyes, but all I could see was total darkness. And it was a little strange and scary at first. But then I looked down towards my feet and I can see a tiny white light. And it was as if I was a miniature person of myself inside my own body. This is how I felt it was happening. I went from my head down to my feet. But before I got to the heart level, there was like a large spirit, I'll say like 6, 7 feet tall. And to me, he appeared like he was wrapped like a mummy. I don't know how that person got in there. I don't know who that person was, but his arms were reached out like he was going to try to grab me. So I steer around him and I go out of my feet. When I get out of my feet, I'm at the top of the ceiling looking down in the ICU. I see myself on the operating table, and I look the same on the operating table. Then I look down at my own body, and I'm the same person, but I'm a ghostly version of that person. That's how I see myself. Then I can hear the doctor and the nurses and my spouse in the room, and the doctor was saying time of death. And then the two nurses were whispering to each other, and they said, "Oh, it's such a shame. She's so young and nice girl, and that this happened to her." And then my spouse, of course, is in the corner crying. I feel absolutely no attachment as far as grief, regret, negativity, worry, or any of that. I feel total bliss. And I have no, like, oh, I'm sorry. There's none of those verbiages in my mind at all. It's like, oh, you're crying and I love you. And I loved everyone in the room. And I understood at that point that I was actually dead, because they also said time of death. And then it's as if I turn around. And when I turn around, I'm kind of like a few feet off the ground standing in clouds. That's how it appeared to me. When I turn around, I look to my right and I see a bright golden yellow light in the distance. But in front of that light, I see two aunts and a grandmother who had previously passed. It was if they were a lot younger looking, like in their 30s or 40s, but I still recognize them. And then I look to my left, and when I look to my left, I see two angels, a little girl in a white robe with long blonde hair. She was probably looked about 8 years old, and she had large wings on her back. And then there was a little baby angel, kind of like flying around in the air and holding on to her robe, like on her shoulder, just laughing with red curly hair. And so then I turn my head forward, looking straight on, and I'm standing in front of Jesus. We're speaking to each other, but we're not moving our lips. And he's telling me, it is not my time to be there. My work is not done, and I must return. So he raises his right arm, and when he puts it down, I am back in my body with a sheet over me. There's a minister who had been standing beside me, giving me the last rites, and he saw I blew on the sheet, and he pulled the sheet up and said, my child, you've had an experience. Would you tell me about it? And I said, yes, but I'm mad. He goes, well, why are you so mad? I said, because I was happy there. I didn't want to come back. It was total bliss. There was no worry. It was just gorgeous, beautiful. And he said, well, my child, it wasn't your time yet. I said, yes, I know. And that was my near death experience. Now, within the first 5 years of that, I felt like there was something really dark attached to me. And I don't know how it was attached to me at that time. I didn't even know what that meant. And I felt that this entity that I could only see as a dark shadow, I couldn't see whether it was man, woman, or what it was doing things to me. Like first, at that time, I was married to a different person when I discovered what it was. And that person was saying, waking up in the middle of the night, and he was saying, quit pulling on my feet. And I would wake up and say, you're dreaming. I'm not touching your feet. And he did that many times throughout the night. The next day, he went out in the yard and was doing some yard work. And then I was taking a nap, and all of a sudden, I felt a hand touch both my legs, cross them, and pull me completely off the edge of the bed onto the floor. Of course, I saw no one. There was no one there. But this happened several times. And one night, it ran a hand up my leg and was trying to get very personal. Then I saw like a form, like a black form, kind of like if you've ever seen the movie Ghost, those black entities that were floating in the air that were trying to get the people that were bad. Mm-hmm. That's what I saw over me, like hanging over me and trying to take my air away for some reason. So we held hands and prayed out very loudly and screamed, you're not allowed here. We worship Jesus and go to heaven. And then it went away. So I had that for 5 years before I started seeing things of future events before they occurred. And that was usually always very, very close relatives or friends that I would see things. I would see spirits come to me while they were still alive. Maybe they were in a coma or a trance in the hospital, and they would come give me messages and tell me to tell different people different things. And I became a messenger per se. It was very scary for quite a while because, first of all, I had to get rid of the entity, which I did. I didn't understand that. Then I started seeing things before they happened, and they were not good things. They were like fires, kidnappings, someone getting assaulted. I would see them repetitively, and then it would happen, well, usually within 2 months or less. And so I became the messenger, and I wrote a book about all this, about 40 years worth of events, and it's called Visions from Above, My Journey, My Destiny, by Amy Jamison. And you can find it on Amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com, and read the first chapter for free on Amazon.com. So that's what happened to me. And I've been doing these messages ever since.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing everything. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Visions from Above, you said?
Yes. Visions from Above, My Journey, My Destiny by Amy Jamison, my pen name.
Right. Perfect. Okay. And in that, you kind of go into further about the things you've seen and the predictions and things like that. Do you speak about that ever?
It was always a future event that was going to happen, and it would happen, but it would happen for me like a movie trailer. Like I would see the beginning, the middle, and the end, but I wouldn't see the entire thing. And so I would tell the person involved what I saw, and it wasn't my job to convince them that this was going to happen or that it was true. I just felt that if I told them once I did, it did happen, but they were okay in the end. Right. I did see 5 deaths, and those deaths did happen. So those are also in the book. I couldn't prevent that in any way.
So I have a few questions for you. Okay. So thanks first of all for compartmentalizing everything and giving it in such a good amount of time. Sometimes I talk to people and it feels like we're on for 2 hours trying to get through the experience.
Oh, sure.
It sounds like you've done a good job in condensing it.
I try.
Yeah. And I'm sure that it's difficult to do that's quite an experience, right? So, a few questions. So one of the things that I'm trying to, I feel like as a podcast host in these spiritual type experiences, I feel like a little bit of an investigator, right? Myself. So I try to dig down and see what commonalities are out there. And one of those things I generally ask everybody is when you left. So yours is interesting because a lot of people talk about coming out the head. You went out the feet. you said
Yes.
when you came out of your body, which that's the first I've ever heard of that. Everyone else has said they've either popped out of their head or they came
Okay.
back through their head. So it's
Right.
interesting. Now, I don't know why that's any different, but that's the way it worked
I
for
don't know
you.
either. I don't even know
Yeah.
why it happened, to tell you the
Um,
truth.
yeah, yeah. But you do recall it. I mean, even when you're describing
Oh,
it,
I
you
have
can
perfect recall of it all my life so far.
yeah, and that was so that's one of the first things is that the memory of a near-death experience seems to be definitely stronger than a dream.
Right.
Right? Our dreams tend to lose strength over time unless it's a recurring dream. And
Right.
but for the most part, most people have NDEs, they seem to have clarity through a majority of their life. Like they do forget a little bit, just like you would forget some of your regular life, but
Right.
the feeling of it feels as real as this. And that was the question was when you were out of the body, did it feel as real as this? You and me talking at this point, did it feel real?
It was definitely feeling real. And like I said, I felt like I was exactly the same person, only when I look at myself and what I consider to be the spiritual form, it looked like a ghost. That's why people call spirits ghosts, in my opinion. That's what ghosts are spirits, good or bad.
Hmm.
And what I tell people about the dreams or visions you're speaking of, usually when you wake up in the middle of the night, you get up to go to the restroom or you get up for something to drink, whatever. When your feet touch the floor, the dream is usually gone, or most of it is gone. With the vision, how I deciphered the difference was when my feet touch the floor and I get up and I go about the different daily routine, I still have that exact same vision. And I'll have it over and over until I decide to tell the person that's in it what I saw. Again, of course, I've been called crazy all my life, even by my family members, till they saw a spirit themselves. But I mean, for me, that's how I dealt with it all my life. I just stood my ground and spoke my truth because I saw what I saw. Do
Right,
you see it? No, I don't know. I can't explain that. I've wondered myself all my life. Why me? Why did I get shown that?
right. Well, I mean, I think there definitely is reason. If you look at your life now, you might think of why it happened at the time it did. I don't
Oh,
know.
yes.
Sometimes that some people will say that they'll be like, "Yeah, I know I needed that for whatever reason. I needed that at the time. It didn't feel like you wanted it. You probably weren't feeling
Right,
that good." But at times, I think people can then look back and go, "Oh, no, that makes complete total sense." Here's something I'm
right.
going to ask you, and you likely don't have the answer to this, but it's something I've contemplated. I've never brought up, and I always feel like something comes up in these episodes that I just bring out brand new. And it's the idea of when you said when you came out of your body that you were still your body, like you were still you, and
Right.
you look the same, that type of thing. Where I get a little bit confused with is when we come into this world, we're a baby, right? So you obviously didn't look the way you do now when you were a baby. So when we jump out, the part that I can't really comprehend is why we look the way we do as adults. Were we already set to look the way we were before we incarnated? Or is that just the look that we have before we go to that light? And then we can change how we look? Like, those are the questions I would have because when you jump out, you're saying you're almost like a light shell of your body, it
Right.
seems like, right?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
I can't come to terms with that. I can't seem to understand that. Do you have any insight as to why you think that would be?
I was never given any kind of an explanation of any of it. I had
Mm,
to come to that conclusion with different things myself. But I believe personally that if I come out as a baby, I might not know who that baby is, even though it might look how I used to look over the years. But let's say maybe you're a person who never had baby pictures for whatever reason. And I feel that I was told and shown that I had to look like I was and when I passed away, when they declared me dead, because then I would know who I was looking at and who I
mm.
was myself.
Right. So it's almost like a spiritual memory.
Right, exactly.
In a sense. I think that's why sometimes too, when I talk to different people, they have, depending on their religious beliefs, they may see
Right.
different religious figures. I have had people who are of different religions, though, see Jesus, and they weren't even believers in Jesus, which is kind of different. But I do find that happens, and sometimes I wonder if it's because that's who they recognize as the power of the person that they need. I don't know. I'm assuming. I haven't had an NDE. Um,
Right.
but you said you did see Jesus. And um Was there any discussion back and forth with him? Was there anything that went on that you believe you had that you don't remember now, or was it just quick? Was it you were out and then he's like, nope, you're going back, and that was it?
It was very quick. It was only the comment about you're not supposed to be here now and you must go back. And he raised his arm. And once he lowered his arm, I was back in my body. There wasn't any time for me to even think about, yes, no, no, I don't want to go or any of that. It just happened. Um,
Right.
I have talked to many, many people over the years who have had longer out of body experiences, as far as they were dead, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, whatever. I've come across so many different people of different nature, different religions, and different beliefs, even non-believers. And what I come to understand, wherever your happy place is in your mind, the place you go to when you're totally stressed, whether it's a beach, a garden, a rainbow, whatever, fishing, whatever it is, I believe that when you pass, that's where you're going to go. My happy place was in the clouds with Jesus and the angels as I was growing up. That's the only thing I knew because I was so inbred with the religious Catholic religion. So I believe that everyone has a different place. They're all going to see a different thing in a different place, whoever their Jesus is, because that's how they were raised. They wouldn't
Right.
know how to correlate with that person or connect with that person unless it was someone they knew. And that's
Mhm.
just what I feel, the way I believe about it.
You know, the way that you say that and describe it, that I love that. And I'll tell you why. There are, you know, skeptics that will say people are experiencing these experiences and coming back and spreading their message to bring people into their religious faith and that type of
Right,
thing, because that does happen with other things in life. I find with the near death experiences, the ones who truly had these experiences, they're the real idea is really around love, and it's like everybody can be loved and everyone is accepted to a point. And the way you just said that correlates with that. You didn't say, everyone needs to come with me to the clouds with Jesus. You said whatever
right,
their experience is, that's what they'll experience. So
right,
I really like that. I appreciate you saying it like that. The other thing is, you had this upbringing in religion and
right.
everything. And when you passed, um, of course, the first person you see is Jesus. So I think that you're right. There's some kind of memory of what makes you feel comfortable in that moment. Did
Exactly.
you have even though you were raised in that belief system, did you ever question an afterlife or what happens when you die or anything like that up until the point
Oh,
you had it?
I did growing up all my life. That was the part where I was kept saying that I couldn't believe in a hell because they weren't making sense to me. The nuns that taught the classes, they were in catechism, they were like, well, if you sin, you're going to hell. And I'm like, well, where's hell? And how come you say he died for everyone, but then some of us go to hell? That just did not make sense to me. I
Right.
have spoken to a lot of people, and very few have said they experienced a hell or saw a hell. Now, I don't know. I'm not that person, but I'm not going to say it didn't happen for them because, people will say, hey, that didn't happen. You made that up for attention. My mother used to say that. And I'm like, why would I make something so bizarre up and why would I want or need to?
Right. Right.
That
Right.
just,
Yeah.
but I became very spiritual as opposed to religion. After
Hmm.
that, I went on a quest where I went to every church of different denominations, even to a Buddha temple in India, and saw how they worshiped. And that's where I came up with the conclusion, in my opinion, that you're going to see what you're comfortable with, the way you were raised. Let's say my spouse at the time, who wouldn't take me to the hospital till the doctor told him he needed to, he'd be held responsible. He believed in aliens, he believed in science, and he believed that there was no Jesus, but there was aliens. I go, well, come to think of it, after that happened to me, I started saying it could have been an alien. I mean, he has superpowers. How do we know? We don't know how this person became who he is or how he got superpowers. We were just told in our different religions what he could and could not do and who
Right.
he was,
Right.
the ruler of the world, the creator.
Were you surprised by what happened? Like when you came back, did you have a newfound idea of what happens when you die? Like did it shift things in you? You said that,
Well, at
you know.
first, I had the dark entity for 5 years, and that person, that spirit was a bad spirit, and that spirit did bad, weird things around me and to me. And then things would start happening, like lights would be on in the kitchen, and I'm sitting in the living room where I can see the kitchen. The light would go off, but the switch would be up. I'd get up to turn it off. It would still be on. It wouldn't connect. There would be loaves of bread flying off the top of the refrigerator. There would be my printer going back and forth like I'm operating it, but no one was there. It was like just different things that happened. It's very scary at first. It's like,
Mm.
what is this and why is this happening? I mean, I even had bishops and ministers try to do like a spirit releasement on me, and I didn't have a spirit in me to release other than my own, is what I come to find out.
Right.
I had that dark spirit trying to get, I would say, was trying to get in my soul. That's how I felt until I prayed and yelled it away. What I
Mm.
didn't realize at the time was whoever was in the home during that time, it would leave me and go to one of those people in the home because it attaches to negativity,
Yeah.
pain, drama. Okay, so I
Hmm.
got better. I got more spiritual. I got more less anxiety as a result. It went to my daughter and tried to do different bad things to her, and her husband saw it happen. He couldn't see the spirit, but he saw like it drug her out of bed, threw her up to the side of the wall and was putting its hands around her neck and holding her up there, and she's kicking her feet, and he sees that, but he sees no one holding her there. So it's like, yeah, it did some really bad things. So at first it was very scary, but after 5 years, and I started seeing things that were going to happen, and my children on an airplane were the first thing that I saw. They were coming from visiting their father in California, and I was in Texas, and they were under a stewardess's care. And she called from the plane. At that time, they had the phones on the plane, and said, "You have a 2.5 hour drive to the airport your children are coming into. We're fine, but we're running out of gas. We're going in circles. I just want to let you know, take another hour before you head that way." And that scared me to death. I'm like, oh my God, I saw that in a vision at my mother's house where I was waiting for their flight to come in before it even happened when she called me. And it started that way. Different people, different things that were going to happen. And that's what I wrote a book about. I jotted it all down and had it in writing for 40 years.
Hmm.
40 years later, I wrote the book.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, and we can go in so many directions with this, but it's interesting because you've had a little bit of an interesting experience in that you had the NDE and you came back, and it's like you brought negative spirit back with you, and whoever that
And
person
that's what
was.
I felt too. I felt
Okay.
the same way.
Yeah,
I grew
that's
up
yeah.
around alcohol, drugs, and a very abusive stepfather. So,
Yeah.
yes, I was surrounded with negativity, drama, trauma, and hurt and pain. And I even had a very remarkable experience at a church one time. If you would like to hear that story, that is even as more remarkable in a way to me because it happened on earth.
Sure. Let's hear.
Okay, so I was not practicing. I was married to a third spouse at that time, and we were not practicing going to church on a regular basis. But I did go, well, maybe on the holidays to the Catholic Church, only because I was raised that way. Even though I wasn't religious anymore, I was spiritual, but I just wanted to see what they had to say in their sermons. So one night we were up partying with friends, and we didn't go to bed till like 2 a.m., drinking, smoking pot, doing all those bad things. And I went to sleep. And then, I don't know, sometime in the middle of the night, I heard a loud voice say, "Get up." And a big hand pushed me out the bed. I pushed onto the floor. I looked beside me. My spouse was sound asleep. It wasn't him. And the voice was so loud and deep. And it said to me, "Go to this church at 8 o'clock service." That was it. But it was so strong, so demanding. I thought I was dreaming. And I'm like, no, I'm awake. I pinched myself. I'm awake. So I heard this. So I got ready and I went to this church. I had driven by it several times. I didn't know anybody there. You know, it was a little different because it was a hands up celebration, song and praise church. And I was raised Catholic. We just didn't do that, you know. So I'm sitting in the second row up on the left, and the minister speaks. And then he goes, "Normally I would do a sermon at this time, but I'm going to have a person here give a little sermon and a message because we have a visiting minister from Dallas, Texas." And he goes, "Okay." So he goes up there, the visiting minister, and he looks around and he goes, "I'm here. Normally I would give my sermon, but I have a message for someone in this church. And as I look around, I see that this person is here. I'm going to point you out and please come up." And the minute he said that, I don't know why I felt like it was me, but since I never went to that church before and I was told to go to that church, I felt it was me. So I had on a blue flowered dress, and he said, "You, the lady in the blue flowered dress." And I looked behind me and all around, and I'm like, I'm the only one right there in the blue flowered dress. So I point to myself, I go, "Me?" He goes, "Yes, come on up." I walked up to the pew, and he says, "Do you know me?" I said, "No, I've never seen you before in my life. I've never even been to this church before." He goes, "Well, why are you here today?" I go, "I was told, woken up and shoved out the bed in the middle of the morning to get up and get ready and come to this service. I don't normally come to services like this, but I felt it was really strong, so I came." He goes, "Well, coincidentally, on the flight here from Dallas, I looked out the window and your face is the face that I see. And Jesus is telling me, you need to deliver this message to this young lady." And I go, "Okay." He goes, "Would you like to hear the message?" And I said, "Yes, please." He goes, "So Jesus said, the kidnapping of the children, of your children, and of all the bad things you've been through recently has been the work of the devil. Jesus is telling you, please stay strong and keep the faith." And I'm like, wow, I'm like in shock because I'm like, well, first of all, yes, my children were kidnapped. I knew no one in that church. I didn't know that minister. I had no idea. So I was in awe and extremely happy after that because I felt, oh my God, I got a message from Jesus on earth. And I thought that could only happen in heaven when I died. I didn't have any idea what was going on, but he was right. My children were kidnapped and I was devastated. So, yes, that happened in a church on earth.
Wow. Did everything turn out okay with your children?
Yes, it was their father and their grandparents who kidnapped them. They actually did it twice, but I ended up getting them back later.
Okay. That's
But
good.
yes, that did happen.
So that was a lot of negative. So, and so thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna say this, the word devil,
Right,
I don't like to go down this road very often, but I do find people who are of non-religious denominations, they don't even really use that term. They use more evil or negative
right,
or so whatever the term, it still resembles the same thing. I'm assuming. I'm not here to say whether or not hell or the devil exist. I don't know. Um, None of us do. I'm sure you have your own assumptions of what that
right.
means as well. Do you, because you've said a few times that you never believed hell existed. So do you actually believe that exists at this point?
No, here's what I believe. After all the people I've spoken to over a 40-year span, I believe that heaven is up there where I was, or on the ground, a few feet off the ground. I can never explain that, how that happened. But as far as the hell, I believe that the hell is on earth because of our own free will. We make bad choices. And when we experience the results of those bad choices, that is our hell. Like we're being punished on earth as far as we made a bad choice. That's not what Jesus or God or our creator wanted us to do, but we did it anyway. And that's my belief. That's how I
Yeah.
believe it is.
So that we create our own hell.
Right.
Listen. Yeah.
Exactly.
The only reason I would agree with that is, and I don't know for sure, but
Neither do I.
yeah, I haven't had an NDE, but I've been into them since I was around 17, and I mean, nonstop, thousands and thousands of readings of different people I've passed, and I found quite a few who were in a very low vibration, negative. Those were a lot of the ones where they'd end up in those places and come back and realize they had to change their life around. Now, there
Okay.
are a few where life was going perfectly normal and all of a sudden they're there. And those are those ones you question. You think, well, why did they end up there? Um,
Yes.
but then you talk to them further, or these people will say, what? But, I was kind of living in my own version of hell, and so
Right. Exactly.
again, what are
Mhm.
we? I think we're so much more than this, and whatever we're putting out there is what we're creating. So if we die while we're putting out a certain energy, we're going to experience that. I also don't know if I believe that if you're in a bad state and you die, that you're stuck there forever. Because time is different, right?
Right.
Time doesn't exist, but there might be work we got to do over there until we get ourselves out of that mess. And sometimes again, I always don't know the answer as to why we even come here, but sometimes I wonder if coming to the earthly plane or this 3D makes it a bit easier for us to grow and learn about ourselves and gives us the opportunity to find those lower and higher vibrations a little bit easier. Because I think over there, whatever we think about happens immediate, whereas here it takes time. Seems to,
Right, exactly.
like because
Hmm.
we're in this time zone, so maybe it helps us learn a bit easier to say, okay, things are going bad. What am I thinking about? What is going on
What
in my
am I
life?
doing?
Right, what am I
Right.
doing? And then you can go the opposite way, and I don't know. These are just my own personal thoughts, but do you believe then at this point that we survive beyond this realm? Like, do you
Oh, definitely. I believe that that is where we're going to go. And like I was saying earlier, I believe that all of us have our own happy place. And I believe that wherever your happy place is, that's where you're going to end up. So, like I said, fishing, maybe you're going to be fishing the rest of your life and very, very happy. I don't know, but it's just from talking to different people and different religions and non-religions, that's the belief that I came up with. It's all the same person. We're just shown a different version of that person so that we can relate to that person.
so you no longer you don't have a fear of death. You don't believe we
I
just
don't have any fear of death, but before that happened to me, I had an extreme fear of death and
yeah.
high anxiety. So yes.
Yeah, and you mentioned I think you said it was a priest that was over top of your pasture. They were giving you, I don't know, were they giving you your last rites or
Oh,
your
yes. The
okay.
last rites when I was in the surgery after they called me dead, that's when the priest came in. So
Hmm.
I saw and heard that too. But it was when I woke up in my body and saw a sheet over my head that, where's the priest? And then I hear somebody beside me and he's pulling the sheet down over me and saying, "You've had a heavenly experience. Would you please tell me?" So I did.
That
It's
is
all very
fast.
strange.
Yeah, it's fascinating that he said that because that probably means he's seen this before.
Right.
What some people experience, same with doctors and nurses. They keep a lot of things quiet because
Exactly.
they don't want to look like they're crazy. And but I'm sure they hear a lot of different things. And I've talked to a few nurses that have seen and heard and seen things when people are close to death
Yes.
or passing over. You didn't want to come back.
Right.
That is a very common trait that I see with people who've had NDEs. They come back and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what am I doing back in this body?" And
Right.
the funny thing is, I laugh about it, but I do believe we're all supposed to love our life, and I think Earth can be beautiful. I think, and I try to say this to people, we get so caught up in the negativity of things that we're here for a reason. There's some kind of reason why we've
Right.
come here. So try to create your own heaven on earth type thing, right? It's difficult. And people say, well, look at all the evil that happens here. I understand that. I understand that. But um, why relish in that? We have to try to find happiness, right? And when you
Right.
came back and you said, "Oh, I didn't want to come back." Was that because you felt something like happier, more loving? Like what was it that didn't leave
Oh,
you?
it was extremely happy and blissful in heaven, or what I called heaven, where I was so calm. There was no anger, no hate, no trauma, no drama. It just wasn't there in the feelings. There's no attachment. I mean, you probably could look down and see your spouse and different people and go, "Oh, I love you." But let's say you had a fight the night before. You're not mad at them, or they wouldn't take you to the hospital and you died. You're not mad at them,
Right.
but you just love them. And
Yeah.
people will ask me this question, excuse me, is what I say, what's the one thing you took from your near death experience that you would like to relate to everyone? I said, well, actually, it's kind of twofold. One is that we are all seeing the same creator. We're just seeing them in a different version, him, her, alien, whoever you see. I believe that. And you go to your happy place, that's going to be your heaven. The other best thing I could tell you is, let's say you and I were related and we got in a horrible fight the night before I passed. I passed the next day and you're devastated because you never got to say goodbye. I'm sorry. And oh my God, I feel horrible. But when your soul leaves your body, you don't take any of that with you. So the person, when they leave their body, they feel happy, blissful, calm. They love you. There's no, oh, I'm mad at you, or oh, you did terrible things. There's none of that. So the person who's suffering is the one left behind, unfortunately. And that's the person just needs to know, don't don't hurt yourself and think bad of yourself for that, because when the person died, they took it with them to heaven as far as only happiness, no bad things, no bad harmful thoughts.
Hmm. Interesting. I was sitting here thinking to ask you that question and you answered it. I lost someone recently, and that was the feeling I had. Like, why did you go? Like, we didn't get a real
Right.
good goodbye. And you think, or do they feel guilty that they're leaving? I think most of the time they don't. The biggest thing I always get is if someone's a new parent and they pass and they go, "Ah, I need to be there for my child because it will influence their life." So those types of things sometimes bring people back if they get the choice.
Right.
You didn't get the choice. You were like, you're going back.
Right. I didn't get
So
to say yes, no, don't put me back, or I want to stay. I didn't get to
right.
say any of those things, but I
Yeah.
understand now because I was meant to help people, heal people. I became a life coach, a hypnotherapist, and a non-denominational minister, besides a published author of the book I wrote about it, and a nanny and a mother. Those are the things that I do now. So, that's how it connected with me, to help people. I do a lot of hypnotherapy and life coaching sessions where I blend it together with my intuitive. Where's your intuitive? In my opinion, it's in your gut, your stomach. You feel something, please follow that, because that's going to be your clue as to whether something good or bad is about to happen, and you want to listen to it. I have learned over the years, if I go against it, I'm sorry later. So now I always listen to it. Like you, growing up, I was like that, where felt I felt things, and I was empathic to other people and their situations, where I just knew something was correct, or I knew it was going to happen, and I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell you why. I just could tell you that's how it was.
Right. Right. Where well, yeah, I was because before I ask you this, but I was gonna say, yeah, it's probably to follow your heart and your gut, not your brain, right? Because a lot of times this
Exactly.
gets confusing and can cause you to go in a bunch of different directions before you get to the right
Right.
destination. So, yeah, your heart and that's hard. And I think that one thing I'm a musician, so I use music as my
Right.
meditation, as I've said, but I am really working on that in myself because I think meditation alone is really healthy, and I'd like to get
Oh, it
better at
does help
that.
a lot.
And
Hmm.
because it really kind of centers us to remembering. And the thing is, just like we eat every day, and I need to take my own advice, is to learn how to meditate. And if you can do it on a regular practice, it becomes more normalized. It's your day to day, and it can probably be so beneficial, right? I was gonna ask you, where can people find you? 'Cause
I
like,
used I used to have a website, as far as my own paid for website, but times got hard with COVID hitting and no work and different things. I let that website go. But you can contact me through my email, which is lowercase letters LEECHERIE 66 at gmail.com. And you can also text me on my phone number at 602-727-9797. And I will respond that way. I do complimentary first time hypnotherapy sessions. So if anyone would like a hypnotherapy session, something you want to work on, a fear you want to let go of, smoking you want to stop, whatever it is, I help you with that. I throw my intuition into it. And I do card readings that are positive card readings with that as well.
and you're okay at sharing the phone number and everything?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. Or I wouldn't have done it. Yes. God always brings me, for some reason, all the people who have been through similar things I have, those are my clients usually.
Mm.
And I know how to help them because I've already been through it.
And again, your book is the book title again?
Yes, it's called Visions from Above: My Journey, My Destiny, by Amy, Amy Jamison, Jamison. You can find it on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
One of the main things I ask, one of the last things I generally ask everybody is, why do you think we're here? What is our purpose to being here on earth?
Okay, and that's a great question, because I think that's why this happened to me, and it led me into the college where I went to in Arizona in my 60s. I kind of did everything backwards. Got pregnant, had twins, gave them up through adoption, even though I didn't want to, but then got married, uh, went to graduate school on a wife's program with a spouse, and then went to Saudi Arabia and worked and lived for 6 years with the oil company. Then came back and went to college in my mid 60s. And in college in my mid 60s, it was totally holistic: mind, body, spirit. So I learned aromatherapy, hypnotherapy, life coaching, stress management, Ayurveda, you name it. I learned all those things in Arizona, and I graduated as a wellness practitioner. So I do hypnotherapy, life coaching, and my intuitiveness all together in a session to help you find your purpose, Like you're asking what's your life purpose. Everyone's is not the same. It may be similar, but it's not the same. If I speak to you within 20, 30 minutes of a one-on-one session with my hypnotherapy and my intuitiveness, I can come up with your life purpose. You actually say it and know it, but you don't connect with it at the time.
That's great. I love that answer. So you're saying really why we're here is to find our purpose and to live out our purpose.
Exactly. We all have a purpose. We're given a God-given reason. Say, for me, it was a care provider, a nanny. That's what I do. I'm a care provider for the elderly and a nanny on earth before I went to college and became a minister and other things. So I've been ministering all my life because I was a dental assistant and being chairside with 5 different rooms with the dentist. You talk to people to make them calm. A teacher helped me see that in college. He goes, "What do you do while you're waiting on the dentist in the rooms?" And I go, "Well, I try to make the patient comfortable and talk to them and just speak about different things." And he goes, "So you're ministering to them?" Because I
Mm.
hated the word minister and priest growing up because
Yeah.
Catholic priests and ministers weren't always so nice. They did things, some of them.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
uh, but I became one. I'm like, okay, I'm non-denominational, but I'm spiritual more than anything. But I'm the kind of minister who will talk to you and be normal at the same time and not quote you Bible quotes, but I will
Right.
tell you different things.
Nice. Of course. Well, thanks for being on today and talking to us about your experience. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I think it gives some insight as to what you went through. The entity piece of it isn't meant to scare people. It's to show that there is, just like in this world, there's positive and
Right,
negative. I mean, we'd be kind of fooling ourselves to think that that doesn't go on beyond this world. But it doesn't
right.
mean you have to be engulfed in that. And like you said,
Right.
you
There's
work
good
through that.
spirits and there's bad spirits. You just have to seek out a positive role model in your life because I never had a positive role model in my life growing up. It was all negative and hurtful and painful. And once I found one person who was a normal, I would say, a happy person with happy feelings and nothing drama happening to them, I just kind of listened and watched to see what they did and picked up on pointers that way. And then I went to the college and learned how to release all the hurt, pain, and drama through hypnotherapy and through life coaching and help others in the same way. And I became a better person as a result of that. Am I perfect? Nope, no one's perfect. So, I still make mistakes too. So,
Same here. But thanks again for being here. I like to usually turn to the camera and just say thanks for sharing, liking, and subscribing to the channel. Please make sure you are sharing these stories to everybody so that we can, uplift people through these stories. And I've loved all the feedback I've been getting about the channel. So thank you to everybody who's subscribing, and thank you again for being on the show today. I appreciate it.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. You have a great day. Thank you, Joe.
So